What you're looking at there is the Pavlova Psychiatric Hospital. This is actually a wing of the hospital that was never completely finished at the tail end of the Soviet Union. There's another section here that is functioning where hundreds of Ukrainian service members are being treated for very serious cases of PTSD. Now, mental health in this part of the world has a very bad stigma attached to it, not least of which because of some of the Soviet legacy that's left over, because oftentimes mental health and psychiatric care was not really about helping a patient. It was more about, if you didn't want to put someone in prison, you could always say that they weren't thinking right. It's the original idea of, political correctness under the Soviet Union. If you didn't think politically correct, there's obviously something wrong with you, and you got sent to a facility like this, and it was not so that you could get better. And so that stigma has maintained itself, and that is certainly part of the reason why people are so reluctant to seek assistance. But of course, there are other reasons as well. I mean, that, we had this stigma, and still do in many corners of the West, that, mental health is not truly treating an injury like you would see in a physical injury. However, given the crisis and the legacy of pain and trauma that Ukraine has gone through and is going through, well, that stigma is being overwhelmed by an urgent need to treat people who are truly suffering, maybe not from lost limbs or other kinds of damage, but from unseen wounds. The war in Ukraine actually began in 2014, well before the full invasion in February 2022. And Ukrainian soldiers cycled through the trenches out in Donbass during that period, so they'd have combat experience. For the war, many Ukrainians knew was coming. But that meant soldiers were subjected to the stresses of war. The Ministry of Health in Kiev knew they'd have to deal with casualties both physical and mental. Established in 2015, Lifeline is a Ukrainian mental health and suicide prevention hotline with its own telephone shortcode, and also a website where there is the option to talk or direct message. The site also contains information in English and in Ukrainian, providing resources for those who may be suffering from mental health issues or thoughts of taking their own lives. The program was founded and is run by longtime Kiev resident, entrepreneur, and journalist Paul Niland. Paul, very nice to see you. Thanks for letting me come by and see your center.
Thank you
very
for coming
much
to the office.
appreciate it. This is the office, I take
Yep.
it? Lifeline. This is your central office.
This is our call center.
This is your call center.
And since the 24th of February, the whole world changed, and mostly now my colleagues are working remotely. But when needs be, they come in here and we operate out of the office. We have 5 workstations set up here, so we can have 5 consultants working consecutively, all taking calls at exactly the same time, which in our busiest periods, like over the weekends and through the night times, that's completely possible that we have 4 or 5 calls in parallel.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and there's a whole system here set up?
Yep.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, well, I understand you've got a couple of people I can talk to about all this.
Yeah, absolutely, we do.
Fantastic. Thanks. While clearly sitting in on a real call wouldn't be right or ethical, one of Lifeline's consultants, Ihor, agreed to demonstrate how most calls start.
You have reached the emotional support hotline. We are ready to help you. What is your name? How old are you? Are you currently in a safe place? What region are you currently in geographically? Yes, I am listening to you. What did you want to ask me? Why did you
Що
call
ви
us?
хотіли в мене запитати? З чим ви до нас зателефонували?
He and his colleague Ina say they're now getting flooded with calls. But the idea is to keep someone talking for roughly 15 minutes until the impetus to self-harm passes. And that often it isn't a solution people seek, but rather a sympathetic ear.
We try to speak to each person for about 20 minutes. And on average we get 100 to 300 calls. A consultant generally works a 6-hour shift in a day. But it can differ.
We talk about panic attacks, anxiety.
They say they feel they have no reason to live. When will this end? I have been depressed for 8 months. I don't know why I get up in the morning.
There is no one piece of advice we can give. Sometimes you just have to listen. Very often they just say, I don't want any advice, I just want someone to listen. A part of the help we provide is just to talk. Some of them need to make a plan of their actions and build their future during such uncertainty. And this is enough to get their plans in order in all this chaos. For some people this is an important process because they feel cornered by things beyond their control and don't see anything in the future.
And for the founder of Lifeline, Paul, it's clearly that. Two people connecting under the stress of war.
As a result of both the collective trauma that we're experiencing from the all-out invasion and the many recognizing that there are many individual level traumas as well, the subject of mental health in Ukraine has become very much in focus again. If you've had to send men and women into battle, their experiences during war are psychologically challenging. You need to provide a support structure to help those people.
And since the full-scale invasion, the mandate of Lifeline Ukraine has expanded significantly to include civilians and not just those out fighting in Donbass, because now all Ukrainians are directly affected by the ravages of war.
Тому що к нам і військ
We get all kinds of people calling in. Soldiers, of course. Veterans. People who just have no one to talk to. Maybe they are internally displaced people. And they don't know anyone where they are now. Or it can be a man whose family has gone abroad, and he is alone. Or maybe just someone who does not want to talk to someone from his daily life because they may consider him not strong.
і через деякий час, як правило,
But it's not just the intensity of the war, it's the brutality of the enemy they face and the trauma of the horrors that surround them. And despite how much no one wants to give in to feelings of anger or hatred, the consultants regularly hear those strong emotions expressed. They may recommend not giving into it, but those are also feelings that often they themselves hold.
я думаю, що, звісно, мінялось.
It has changed from the beginning. Back then it was anxiety and panic attacks. The person starts the call without any reason, just feeling fear. Now there is more anger about what is happening, for why this is happening.
To feel anger. It is normal. To be angry with the Russians. It is okay. It is also not healthy to suppress this anger. So when the caller says he has anger towards Russians, it is easy to understand. Because I am also Ukrainian. And even if we don't talk about Russians specifically, people call when there is shelling to express their anger at being attacked. They call from Kharkiv, from Dnipro, because they have no one to talk to while the bombs are falling. So they call at 2 a.m. in the morning because There is nothing else to do, and that feeling of helplessness can lead to anger. For example, one woman called during an alarm, and there was bombing, and she didn't go to shelter. She is stuck at high floor in her building. So what can she do? She called us because she was really scared, but also just wanted to vent. And I could hear the bombing through the phone.
We all know the names. They've become infamous.
Yeah.
But what people need to realize is it's not just Bucha and Irpin. It is Kupiansk, it's Mariinka, it's obviously Mariupol.
Because this is what the Russians traumatize on purpose.
That's what they do. They do it absolutely everywhere. It's one of their forms of control, and their forms of control over people include torture, include
physical and psychological.
Physical and psychological torture, yeah, exactly. And sexual violence as well. That's one of the ways in which they use it as a weapon to keep the local occupied population under control, right? And so in the latter part of 2022, we as a team took on a series of training courses. We commissioned the best experts in the world to train my consultants on how they help somebody in the case that we come across someone who is a survivor of sexual violence. What are the kind of things that are specific to them, and how specifically do we help them? We also did a training course on how to help young people and how they've been affected by the war. And we did a training course on how to support people who've been displaced by war, right? All of these kind of different aspects of the direct ramifications of this phase of the war. They're the things that we focused on in that training session. But the other major difference was in the volumes of calls. So prior to the all-out invasion date of the 24th of February of last year, we used to average about 1,000 calls and chats, instances of support, we call them. We had an average of 1,000 instances of support per month. In April and May of this year, it was as many as 6,000.
Yeah.
Now we're around 4,500, something like that. But yes, the volumes of interactions that we have grown enormously.
In order to do this very difficult job, these men and women need to know and feel real compassion, empathy, no doubt sometimes taking on the burden of the pain that they doctor. It's a special kind of person that can do that.
When you put out a call saying we need more people to work in our call center and work in our service, what kind of person responds to that ad?
It's a caring person. It's a caring person. It's a very perceptive question, actually. Since the very beginning of Lifeline Ukraine, we've had very, very little turnover from our team. We've kept the core of the team together essentially since day one and through to today, despite all of the...
How many do you have currently?
22. We have 22 consultants who man the telephones or answer the chats around the clock. And the reason I think why we've got this great retention level is because people who came to Lifeline Ukraine, people who said, yes, it's a job for them and they're paid for the time that they put into their work for Lifeline Ukraine, but it's not just a job, it's not just about a salary, it's a mission. And the mission is to save lives.
The chance to contribute to their fellow Ukrainians in this hard time is clearly also part of what motivates them to do this work. But it's not the only thing that drives them.
Це важка робота, я скажу так. Це важка робота.
It is difficult work. But there are some reasons I love it. We have a real opportunity to help people. Those people who want some help. They get that help. It is only if you want help can we help you. And it gives some motivation when you know that given 5, 10, or 15 minutes, you give help to some people. And it gives you strength for the next call. If you really help someone, you feel yourself useful.
And the effect of each successful call means that many people in the life of the person we have helped will also avoid suffering. The effect of helping just one person goes far beyond just that person. It is also part of changing the opinion about seeking treatment. Generally, we are trying to give the idea that psychological health is still health. Not to divide psychological, mental and physical health because it is all one thing.
But to me, what that says about the Ukrainian nation, we will show them that we are brothers, right? Is that it's such a broad tent. And having been here for 20 years and been so very accepted into this society, and Lifeline Ukraine is one of my ways of giving back. You know?
And if there is even the slightest good to come from all the pain and suffering in Ukraine, may it be at least in part that people who need help get help when they need it. And future generations don't fear seeking treatment for those unseen wounds.
Як би казати, на жаль, в нас буде
It
достатньо.
is very sad, but we will have a lot of work to do after the war. There will be PTSD and other psychological problems. But right now, we are on the front line of changing the mood of our society. This war is also a mental war against fear and stress. And we are here to help people achieve that mental victory.
В тому числі і терапевтичну допомогу.
So back here at the Pavlov Psychiatric Hospital in Kiev, and that is Lifeline Ukraine. They're doing really good work there, and it was very kind of them to spend some time with me. It's important to recognize that Ukrainians are now trying to change the way that mental health is treated in Ukraine. And it's pervasive throughout the entire society. If there is a silver lining to the tragedy of this war, maybe that's it, that people recognize that sometimes you need to seek help when you're hurting inside. And of course, also, it is vital for those who are on the front lines and who go through deep trauma and suffer from PTSD, that they get the treatment that they deserve. I mean, as somebody who spent a lot of time with American forces in their wars, recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, I am well aware that our veterans in America suffer from this kind of pain, and it can lead to further tragedy. You know, and war is a terrible thing. God knows there's been enough death already. And helping people come to terms with the wounds inside, that's important, because hopefully once this war is fully over, the casualties and the dying will end with the actual conflict and not at someone's own hands while they're suffering from very serious internal injuries and mental health issues. And Lifeline's part of it, so good on them. And I urge you to support them. I will put a link below. As always, Slava Ukraini! I Героям Slava!